Hello and welcome to Talking Point here on WESN Contents Capital. I'm Keaton Shaw.
And I'm Sean Michael Small. And if you think you're seeing double, you are incorrect. For those that got AM Prime this morning, well, my boy here is doing double duty. Keaton, how was it?
It was good. I'm very much wide awake and appreciative of the fact that I got to wake up early, leave home early, not face any traffic. Boy, oh boy, do I feel tired.
Yeah, I mean, that's one way to deal with the traffic, you know. That's been the strategy for many individual, many a trainee, many a person.
No, but
honestly,
honestly,
time immemorial, just wake up earlier.
It's just honestly a matter of getting, I suppose, into the groove. Because after a long weekend, by the way, how was your long weekend?
Not long enough. It's never enough, folks.
That is a fair answer. I actually accept that answer. But after a long weekend of actually enjoying not having to wake up early, I indulged. I slept late.
Yeah.
When I say late, I meant the sun was in the middle of the sky, blazing hot, when I realized, God, it's hot.
That's not late. That's not late. Well, we'll actually get into that in our second segment with regards to the heat. Folks, it seems as though be prepared for many more days like that up ahead in both this month and next month. However, before that, let's go into our post-Easter daily review. And our first story here, of course, is, well, the Archbishop had an Easter message basically saying, do not live in fear. But he actually went a bit more and saying, you know, Jesus conquered death, so why should we be afraid? And I'm not too sure if it's the reporting or maybe context is missing, because I wasn't necessarily there at the cathedral where he gave his sermon. But I do find his messaging somewhat interesting.
Jesus also rose from the dead.
Yes.
You know, and I must be careful because I don't want to seem as though I'm being blasphemous. But, you know, I mean, if you were to listen to his messaging, his Easter messaging on a whole, his sermon, then perhaps in that context it might make more sense. But just over the snippets that we've read based off of the news articles, then it's not very much inspiring. Now, we should not live in fear, or we should not lose our faith despite the economic and social challenges of the country. He says, what are you most afraid of? Mostly afraid of death. What about rejection? Not having enough to live a decent life, lose your job, lose your health, you can't support yourself. Those are your big fears. If our biggest fear is death, and Jesus has conquered death, what are you really afraid of? Mm-hmm. We should not live in fear.
I think it was more like an analogy. Like, we should not be afraid of death. Therefore, don't be afraid of a whole host of these other things. The irony, of course, is me saying that, if my interpretation is correct, is that given the crime situation in the country, people have a very real reason to be afraid just in general. The amount of crime that I saw at a glance, I didn't even really go that deep into the news the last 4 days. Just at a glance, I found a bit alarming. It was as though, well, no, there were no breaks, no days off for criminal activity. It was very unfortunate, but it is what it is.
Well, from the time that we closed our laptops on this show last week, Thursday morning, till the time we opened them this morning, the news has not been very good, to say the least. It's just story after story of murder, of rage, of death, of blood being shed, of people being beaten. And the thing is, whilst I understand that the Roman Catholic Archbishop is doing his best to try and instill some level of spirituality and faith in society to try and conquer the situation and get over it, you know, people reading it for the very first time may not take too kind to it. For example, do not live in fear of losing your health, of losing your job, of not being able to support yourself. My response to it would be, though I worship God on a daily basis, and though I am spiritual and say my prayers, people are not necessarily giving donations or funding or offerings to me. And therefore, I have to be fearful of what if I can't pay my bills at the end of the month? As much as I budget, companies are raising their prices all the time.
I think there's a difference between being responsible and having a healthy concern or even fear of disaster, right? Not necessarily natural disaster, but disaster in the sense of something significantly large goes wrong with regards to my life, with regards to my job, with regards to my house. It could be due to a natural disaster. But I think what I believe the point that he was trying to make is, right, is ultimately we can't live in fear and let that fear paralyze us and let that fear overwhelm us and be obsessed with that fear, which some people might actually do. It's very unhealthy. Then again, I don't think, and it could be interpreted this way, it's one of those things where I believe Christians and religious people need to be careful, because that whole why are you afraid of death? I think therein lies a much more personal question with regards to belief, as well as the fact that, look, we could all end up in the promised land at the end, but there is still something primal and very real about having someone ripped away from our lives or being ripped away from the lives of those around us.
I think people think about it too from, if I die, what happens to my family?
Exactly.
But I mean, I will take with good faith his messaging. I mean, okay, think about it this way, Sean. Following a church service, such as this sermon, or following even this show, what do? We say, okay, great, don't live in fear, fine, no problem. You get in your car, you be very careful on the road, you drive home. When you get home, you look all around your surroundings 2-3 times before opening your gate, or before getting out to open your gate. You get into your driveway, you check all around before locking your door, before coming out, you get out, you lock your car door, you open your burglar proofing and your water iron to get into your house, you lock that back, you lock your door again. And again, even if you hear the slightest noise which seems odd, or that the dogs in the neighborhood start to bark, you're looking out, you're keeping an eye out. And the issue is, as much as we do not want to live in fear, being a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago now, you live with fear. Fear is your next door neighbor. Fear is always in your house. Given the fact that we're living in such difficult times, and that is a very polite way of saying it, you cannot help but understand that there's no separation between us and fear. It's just one.
And I cannot disagree with you, because literally that is part of my routine, particularly coming home, to a lesser extent leaving the house, but particularly coming home, we got an electronic gate, not because we wanted something fancy and expensive and a bigger gate. We had for years the same small open by hand wire mesh, well, not so much wire mesh, but gate. And well, we were the victim of a crime. Well, my mother was directly, and it caused her to want to and institute better or stronger security measures around the house. And it wasn't the first time. Some time ago, when we were in Tobago, we were burglarized, and the same thing, all of the burglar proof and wrought iron, they were just stacked upon stacks, to the point where you have to wonder if this is too much, if this is even safe. But it felt necessary, because you leave one opening and then somebody comes in and then...
Put it this way, Sean. It is for that very same reason of which you just described that my family implemented an electronic gate system. Listen, as a kid, I used to look forward getting home, getting out the car, and sliding the gate. I actually used to look forward to that. I don't know if other kids look forward to that, but I used to. We had to get an electronic gate out of necessity. Not out of desire, but out of necessity.
Yeah.
And even burglar proofing, you're right. The amount of burglar proofing now that you need in your house is a hazard in itself. Because though you need that level of security, in instances where there is an emergency or perhaps a fire, trying to scramble to get out is an issue.
Basically, because of a fire. So, folks, not necessarily to put down what the Archbishop was trying to say, but I guess it's one of those things where in complex societies with complex problems, simple messages aren't always the most effective, because as much as we are bringing up these things, Joe Public that might hear it and disagree with it will be 10 times harsher, will bring up 10 times more many arguments to say what he's saying is foolishness and he living in this country, boy. How we could be saying that? That don't make sense. I had to this, I had to that, I had to be worried about this, I had to be worried about that. So, and then there's also the factor where we don't know the individual circumstances of which everybody lives in. But I appreciate what the Archbishop was trying to say. Perhaps he should have just been a bit more careful with saying it. But on a similar vein also, in our post-Easter edition, there is another set of positive messaging coming from the U.S. ambassador, where the U.S. ambassador basically said, technically she said the U.S. applauded TNT for its religious freedom as one of the most religiously diverse and tolerant countries in the world. And I think it's interesting that she said that because I assume it mirrors my own observation. I haven't been to the States that often, but between the few times that I've went to the States and to Canada, and then, you know, of course you consume foreign media, so you get a certain sense of how politics and ideology goes on there. But I did get a sense in the States when I was there on the ground, in New York, of very diversity, right? And maybe this is where London is more, you know, integrated than New York. Everybody was sectioned off. Everybody had their place, and they didn't necessarily like move beyond their place. And I'm assuming the U.S. ambassador is taking note of the fact that, look, to some extent, you're going to see the cultures and the races mixed up, not just, well, we have it in the borders, but now within the various cities and boroughs, it's mixed up.
You know, Candace Bond, the relatively new U.S. ambassador, addressing the Muslim brethren gathered at the Masjid al-Tawaw in Lowlands, Tobago. Again, I appreciate the messaging. I think that it certainly is something that we are to reflect on because, in my opinion, London is the most cosmopolitan society or city in the entire world. But it's not necessarily the most tolerant. And this is why I keep asking myself, are we becoming more liberal or are we becoming more intolerant, which is why there is a separation. There's a fight for liberal ideas and liberal ideology, but that in itself is causing a separation. So what really is it? The fact is, Trinidad and Tobago is racially diverse and religiously diverse. But even so, there is a lot of division. There is division in the church. Yeah. Amongst members of the congregation. There's and not necessarily because of religious belief. You know, I'm here. I'm a good Christian. I'm in church. I'm praying to God. And it's the same. It could be the same thing in a mosque. It could be the same thing in a temple. There is a division or separation because of ideology.
With regards to the Roman Catholic Church, all I'll say is this. The irony, of course, with religion being something that has to be ultimately personal because you have to believe it, right? And you can't force somebody to believe in something. Do they really believe it then? Yes or no? This is the whole debate about or concept of free will and why we were put on earth to love God. But, you know, if you could just force somebody to love God, then why would God give us free will in the first place? So a whole philosophical thing. But I think what the consequence of that we don't necessarily realize is people are free to interpret it to some extent how they want to. And then they make the mistake of judging others based on, are you in line with my interpretation? And then, of course, now religions on a whole, this is one thing that I found very, very odd. Technically speaking, once I believe in a religion, I am by default saying I believe that all other religions are false, right? Just technically speaking, there's no other way about it. I can't say I believe that there is one God, but I also think that these other beliefs for these other gods exist. Like that doesn't work. Now, am I about to go and have a fight with somebody over it, or I'm not even necessarily wanting to say that I believe in this and that is false. It's a weird spot that the concept of religion has, where no matter how well-meaning you are, that technicality just always exists. And it's interesting to see it play out on various levels.
I enjoy having conversations on such topics such as religion and such as race and the perception of religion and the perception of race, because if I were to focus on trying to be, and I think the US ambassador is right from one sense, we are religiously tolerant from the fact that we have a public holiday that recognizes the celebration or the most significant events for any religious institution or any religious belief. For example, we just had Easter weekend.
Yes.
Right. We have Ramadan coming up. Right. Hindu, Christmas, Spiritual Shout to Baptists, etc. I think the issue is, as much as there are holidays that recognize that diversity, as a society, we are not religiously tolerant. Maybe you can go to church and practice your faith, or I can go to church or temple or mosque and practice my faith. That does not necessarily mean that we are tolerant of one another, because outside on the streets, you know, it's one thing. There's still that separation that you see in New York. That separation also exists here in TNT. And I think the major issue for me is that at what point in time do we understand and do we recognize that, listen, I cannot, based off of your religious beliefs, if I were to question your religious beliefs or you were to question mine, if I were to ask questions or try and analyze it or say, I don't believe in what you believe in, but I respect you, that's one thing. But people cannot even openly express their thoughts, their opinions on religion without somebody saying that's disrespectful, without somebody saying that's blasphemous.
So, and therein, that's a whole other debate that's been going on to some extent in the States, in Canada, in England, not so much the rest of Europe though, I think, but potentially the rest of Europe, in the sense that, look, how do we have important conversations and express important ideas, but we have to not offend anybody, right? And we can't risk offending anybody, so it all has to be politically correct. But then at some point, then you can't have important conversations, because think about it, there's a reason why people say don't talk about politics or religion in certain situations. Right? Because it will just get contested, because different interpretations, again, will clash at the end of the day. You could be of the same religion and potentially different interpretations could clash. And of course, don't talk about different religions and different political, ideological beliefs on various issues. But I think with regards to religion itself, you're right. I remember I was invited to Diwali celebrations. I won't say where, because I don't want to reveal the church that was next door.
Or be offensive.
Right?
Yeah.
And the church that was next door decided to have like a Eucharistic, not Eucharistic, sorry. Basically just have a session. This was a weekday.
So
right?
a prayer meeting, you can assume.
A praise and worship session, right? Very loudly, very loudly. And I took it upon myself to leave the Diwali celebrations, of which I was a spectator, right? But, just, observing. Go down there just to see what was going on. It wasn't a congregation. It was just the band. It was just like a handful of people. And I'm very certain you don't just have a handful of people come out full tilt to sing songs and beat the drum on a random day in the week, right? Maybe I'm wrong, maybe this is what they do every other Tuesday, but it felt to me as though their only objective was to just be disruptive for what was going on next door. And it bothered me a lot.
I'm glad you raised that, and this is my final point on this issue. You can say you're a good Christian. You can say you're a good Hindu. What makes you a good Christian, a good Hindu, a good Muslim, a good Shouter Baptist, a good Catholic, whatever your faith or belief is, it's not going to church or going to temple or going to mosque for every single event. It's not being there every Sunday, every Friday evening, every Saturday night. It's not even a matter of having to donate my wealth to the church. I have seen people who will go to every single celebration involved in their religious belief or faith, I have seen people who will donate endlessly to the temple, to the church, or to the mosque. I have seen that happening. But as soon as they step out, they don't even practice. So they're not even necessarily a good person or a good citizen. But in their mindset, being a member of the congregation is me being a good Hindu, a good Christian. They will give everything. Clothes, money. Oh, you have some people that believe that passing all the money to the church is everything. But they walk out onto the street and hesitate to give $1 to a man on the road who asking for a meal.
Or give him a meal if you don't want to give him cash.
Their thing is, right, give them a meal. Their thing is that he going to take that $1 and buy drugs. Even if that's the case, that's on the man. Yeah. Give him a meal if you want. But this is my point. You are not necessarily a good Christian, and let me stress this very carefully. You are not necessarily a good Christian, Hindu, Muslim, whatever, by you sitting in a congregation. Yeah. It's what you practice outside that matters a lot. It's your way of life, and especially how you treat yourself and how you treat others.
There's a lot more I could say. I'll just say this to wrap it up, folks. There are reasons why people get disillusioned with whatever religious organization they get this, or faith they get disillusioned from. And part of it is behavior like this. Now, it might not be expressed exactly in the way that Keaton just said, but when you get down to it, when you get down to how people utilize their interpretation of what is to be a good practicing member of their faith, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen this in your lives, when it turns other people off, particularly the young people that all faiths want to attract in order to keep their faith, going strong, ask yourselves, is this really what it means to be good at my faith? Folks, we have to take a break. When we come back, we want to get into the issue with regards to the water supply of the island over the next couple of months. Stay tuned. This is Talking Point on WESN, your content capital.
This May, the spectacular event you've been waiting for is coming. May 27th, celebrate amazing North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Festival grounds, Blashy Shares. Born here, played here.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order or visit us in-store at Forces flagship Mac Bean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing, Andre.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. Now, you may or may not have noticed that these nights could be quite warm, unseasonably. I mean, I know we're in the dry season, but could be quite warm. And it seems as though the sky could be quite dry. I can't remember the last time, things seem to have been this kind of parched. Because the joke was, I believe for the last couple of years that the dry season didn't seem that dry. But recently the Ministry of Public Utilities had a press conference which included some explanations with regards to the water situation. But more importantly, it included, well, their announcement for the intentions moving forward over the next couple of months. At the minimum, it seems, the next 2 months. Let's take a listen now with Cue This.
We had predicted drier or below normal conditions for the western areas of Trinidad and on the eastern areas of Trinidad and also for Tobago, we had predicted near normal conditions. Well, what actually played out was very similar to those predictions. For Trinidad, at the Piaco gauges, we would have had a 68% rainfall. That is in relation to the normal. February 55.6, and this March going there was very low at 16.7, and Tobago was closer to normal for January, 80.2%, 78% for February, and 41.1% for March. Near normal to below normal rainfall for April to June, with flooding potential being moderate, and this most likely below normal in April and May, and this flooding we speak about would be most likely in June, where June would be more closer to normal as far as the rainfall is concerned.
We are here to really address our dry season plans. Traditionally, WASA would prepare a dry season plan annually, and what was just indicated by the Met Office would be taken into account. Normally we would share this at the beginning of the year, but because of how we have been managing the situation, managing the water storage, managing our resources, we have been able to fare quite well up until now, and we continue to fare well, but we felt it prudent in light of what was just indicated to now bring to the public's attention that we need to pay particular attention and closely monitor our resources. Granting of the IDB loan, we will be embarking upon pipe replacement. We have identified critical pipes that require replacing. That contributes to the high volume of leakages that we experienced in the past. In addition, we will be embarking upon technology that will allow us to monitor our network and to pick up leaks and other NRWs in a quicker manner and be more responsive, so that in so doing we will manage the resources by managing leaks. We have also recognized that with the climate change and the impacts on climate change, that really affects our surface water sources. The Director of Operations would give you where we are in terms of long-term averages, and in 2 of our reservoirs we are actually above average. In the other 2 we are slightly below the long-term average, but we are managing those resources. What we have done as well, we are embarking upon an extensive well drilling exercise, so that we will not be dependent or totally dependent on surface water. We will be looking at groundwater, which is not as susceptible to climate change as surface water is. The opinion of the experts are that in Trinidad we are not as affected as our neighboring partners. We are not in a crisis situation. But that being said, that does not mean it will be business as usual. Given the climate trends, we would like the population to be wary of the warnings issued by the Met Office. We're doing all in our power to monitor and to sustain and maintain our supply as far as possible. I've already outlined some of the steps that we are taking. And at this point, and I would again emphasize, this is coming in April. Normally, we would make such calls in January and February, but we will be implementing our water reduction strategies, in that we will be issuing the normal restrictions on the use of hoses, watering of lawns, washing of vehicles, etc. And in keeping with our drive, our leak reduction drive, our well exploration, our police will be out monitoring to ensure that the restrictions are complied with. This is in order to allow us to effectively and efficiently maintain our resources so that we do not, and I repeat, so that we do not reach to crisis proportion. Again, I want to emphasize that we are not in a crisis. This is not the WASA of the past. This is the new WASA. We are being we are being predictive, not reactive. In the past, we would await for the levels to drop and then react to that. We are taking precautions. We are taking precautionary measures to ensure that we do not get to a crisis situation.
So, folks, therein lies the press conference last week, Thursday, Ministry of Public Utilities. There were other members of WASA there to speak, but for the most part, we got the gist of it from the chairman. And I found that his messaging, the meteorologist at the start, he had a lot of technical information of which the camera never showed his slides when he was giving us all of the briefings with regards to the calculations and then the conclusions. It seemed redundant, but he was going through all the data points so that people could follow. But I felt as though the chairman's presentation was actually two presentations. One was about the long term, how we were going to deal with managing our water resources, and the other one, which ironically one could argue may have had less detailed information in his presentation, was the current situation, which is based off of the rainfall that we've seen over the last 3 months. We have more or less 3 more months to go in the dry season, and they want to take precautionary measures up front just in case. We might get normal rainfall this month and next month, although the first couple of days, I think the meteorologist said at the time it would have been April, the first 4 days or 5 days he was working with, it didn't necessarily promise to be normal rainfall levels.
Can I ask you a question? At what point were water restrictions lifted? You know when they said a water schedule?
So he did go into that. From what I understand, those who are on our water schedule already won't be any further affected. That's point number one. And point number two, he did acknowledge the fact that yes, there are communities with long-term issues of water supply, and he tried to differentiate the two, which is technically correct, but
this is not the WASA of the past. This is the new WASA. We're being more reactive. I mean, so sorry, not reactive. Predictive.
They fixed the backlog of leaks. He even went to explain. This is the interesting thing. You would think that the press conference, again, your lead-in is a meteorologist to explain the low levels of rainfall. March was 16%, 16% based on the averages of what March normally gives us over however many years they're looking at. And he went into how, the minister was misinterpreted, and it didn't mean that there are no new leaks, and it's just that we met a backlog of leaks that we managed to fix. And I get that. However, the irony is you're trying to fix a communication error with another communication error. Deal with your first issue first, because a lot of what he said up front was about the leaks and the long term and whatever. does that have anything to do with current dry season? I don't think
Three
so.
things. Three things. One, water restrictions. We were never off of a water schedule. There were always water restrictions. They were never enforced because it seems as though WASA was cutting water whenever they wanted to. This entire thing about, not using hoses to wash cars, not using a hose to, water your lawn or your driveway.
So what happens to the car wash businesses?
Well, as far as I'm aware, the car wash businesses that I have gone to, that I patronize, they've used buckets. They have. They fill big barrels with buckets. That's as far as I'm aware. There may be others out there who do different. But the thing is that those regulations were never enforced. I can't recall the last time hearing somebody was issued a fixed penalty ticket for the use of their hoses. So that's two. Three, they can't necessarily give anybody a fixed penalty ticket anyway when there are these leaks. Or you could tell me to conserve water when I seen water flowing down the road. I'll give you an example. I went by my aunt and uncle for weeks. They're living on a hill. There was a leak from the top of the hill. A leak from the top of the hill, right? Water pressure was high. Water's flowing down at night. He called, he made the report to WASA. They took the report. 2 weeks passed, nothing was fixed. So they're having water issues, but the water is still flowing. He calls WASA again. You know what they told him? But sir, on our, on our data network here, that pipe has already been fixed. What do you mean that pipe has been fixed? He says, I'm seeing it, water is flowing, that pipe has not been fixed. But sir, it says in our systems that pipe was already fixed.
And there you get basically, unfortunately, somebody who is not capable of exercising reasonable judgment. If someone is telling you that water is leaking, at the very least, dispatch somebody to investigate.
No, it's not that. You see, crews, they're probably crews, and they're probably managers on these crews who are saying, you know what, this was fixed. Or they probably went on a day where WASA locked up water and they didn't see any leak. Okay, this was fixed, we're going to get paid for this.
Right, and I don't necessarily want to put, unethical behavior into the equation, but we can't discount the possibility. But I'll give you another example. If you have driven around Savannah this morning, I don't know when it started because I stayed home all weekend, but I just found it interesting that after watching a press conference, and I guess this might be one of the bigger stories coming out of the weekend, it was just before. I'm driving around Savannah, and there is a massive leak somewhere in the plot of land just before Belmont, just right next to the roundabout that goes up St. Anne's Cascade, right, next to Queen's Hall. There's a massive leak, so the not small portion of the Savannah roadway actually looks as though heavy, it just recently rained. And water is just flowing. I don't even know where it's flowing from. So I just find it's not even like a remote leak, somewhere in the wilderness, some dead end valley.
Sean,
No. This is on the Savannah. Yeah, we worry about our leaks. The chairman did say about we're utilizing more smart technology, blah, 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 blah. But I think the technology is potentially outsmarting the new WASA.
So we have identified pipes that need to be refilled. Okay, listen, let me get it clear. If they didn't have a press conference, we would all be wondering and questioning what's going on, no information, right? But then the information that you give to us does not equate to reality. You're telling me about a reduced supply. It can't be a reduced supply if I haven't been getting water in the first place. You're telling me about low pressure. I would love low pressure water if I am not getting water at all. And then there's the extreme. There are those who are getting water, but the pressure is so high, the pressure is so intense. There are plumbers who've actually come to my parents' home and they've installed a pressure monitor. And the pressure is so high that there are warnings that it could actually destroy your piping. In fact, there was a leak in my shower because of that. So it's two extremes. It's either low water pressure, but you have no water for months now, right? Or extremely high water pressure that your pipe busts.
I mean, we have to close that. That is the quirk of our water system, which is it's not one big system, it's multiple smaller systems. But I hear you. The fact that Again, you can't solve one communication error with more communication errors. And I just felt that this press conference was a bit of a mess. I think they had a plan. I don't know if the chairman necessarily stuck to the plan.
Where's the transformation of WASA?
Right?
The biggest thing that was started. Where's the transformation of WASA?
Therein lies the final question. And I'll just leave you folks alone with this. We were waiting however long for the minister and the restructuring of WASA, only to be told by the chairman, this is the new WASA. What's new about it? Because it's the same crap, different day. Just say it. Folks, we have to take a break. When we come back, we'll be speaking with regards to, of course, our sister Isle. We're getting closer to the new political party and the implications of, just what it means that we need to have parties even when the executive body does not recognize political parties. Folks, this is Talk About on WSN. Your content capital. We'll be right back.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
The best for your baby is at dbesttoys.com. We have the best strollers, car seats, walkers, feeding accessories, playpens, cribs, clothing, and the widest range of brand name toys like Barbie, Hot Wheels, Nerf, LOL, Fisher-Price, Cocomelon, Intex Pools, Amazon Fire tablets, HP and Gateway laptops, and the best bikes, scooters, skateboards, and ride-on. Visit us in-store at 7 Main Road, MacBean, or shop online now at dbesttoys.com. That's dbesttoys.com. We have the best toys at the best prices.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through. Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m. only on WESN, Content Capital.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered.
The conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. only on WESN, Content Capital.
This May, the spectacular event you've been waiting for is coming. May 27th, celebrate amazing North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Festival grounds, Blashy Shares. Born here, played here.
Welcome back to Talking About, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, it's Tuesday when we talk Tobago, and with us is someone who is no stranger to the program, a brilliant mind and thinker, organizational consultant, Mr. Richard Solomon, is here to speak with us with regards to, well, the implication of what we're getting out of what's going on in Tobago is it seems as though party politics is ingrained into our society as being so important. And I do wonder, on top of the individual situations with regards to the new party, you know, is this a good thing? I don't think it's a good thing. And I'm worried that the time that we have to break away from it, even with the opportunity, we're still so ingrained, we don't want to seize it.
Yeah, it's interesting because we're dealing with this interesting duality. On the one hand, my position is that Watson Duke would have had a very difficult time winning the elections, THE elections, had he not put someone else, and in this case, in the person of Farley Augustine at the front. He seemed to have had good currency with the people. But I have also lamented the fact that we don't seem to be prepared to embrace individuals. So it's a strange thing, because I think I remember Dr. Eric Williams saying many years ago, and I don't know if this is probably reported, because I was pretty young when he died, but you know, it was something to the effect that you could put, I think it was a crapu, in, you know, whatever tie, and people would vote for that person, which speaks to our willingness to support the party. And so it goes to the point that quite possibly we were not ready yet to put our support behind individuals. But when you think about it, the party having this veneer and this covering that then says, well, if you support the party, the color, then surely you must support the individuals put forward by the party. That is a problematic proposition.
Well, Mr. Solomon,
but individuals have not fared well in our political system.
Well, let me put it this way. With regards to the current THE executive, it's not as though some broke away. Just about the entire thing broke away. One could argue that for all intents and purposes, what actually made up the PDP left Duke. So yes, he still has the name, yes, he still has the party chairman, yes, he still has the dog, but the key members that made up the entire slate left. So to some extent, why are we so concerned that, well, they don't have a party and we voted for a party? I believe, I could be wrong, they made up the party, they made up the campaign. I didn't necessarily get this originally from Duke. I don't get that sense that he was the one that said, let me fix this first, in quite the way that the party put forward. And during that campaign, he was a bit more silent than we're accustomed to.
Yeah, well, Watson Duke has always, and for long as we've observed him in the public domain, he has had cocoa in the sun. And therefore, you know, people have looked at him with kind of side eye. We're not so sure. So I think it was a political stroke of genius to put someone else in front and build a group of people around him that the people of Tobago obviously trusted enough to put the THA in their hands. Your point is made. Why do we therefore now, or why do they therefore now need a symbol, a slogan, a party, a color, if we have a collection of individuals whom we trust enough to handle our business?
Well, Mr. Solomon, on that note, on that particular note, let we fix this. I mean, that was the tune and the party's position and stance heading into the last THE election. It worked for them. But let me fix this is quite ironic now. It's now let me fix this of what? The individuals or of the party? Because, you know, let's focus for a moment on this creation of this party. It seems as though it's a change in itself. It's starting from the bottom go up and not from the up come down. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it seems that way. And again, if you look at some of the individuals, they don't come from significant political stock, significant political history, compared to some of the other politicians we've seen who their names and their life looms large, you know. But I think there's something psychological about having a grouping and naming it something. People tend to identify with that. Even when there is an individual that we support, somehow the attachment of that individual to a group seems to rally people. And maybe that's what they are going for in this case, for that wider rally, you know, to pull the individuals together under a collective banner that is a thing that is structured and organized and orderly, separate and apart from the THA. Maybe that's what they're going for. I mean, they haven't told us too much, but maybe that's what's going on here.
Well, they did say, apparently the Chief Secretary did say that April the 17th, so we're looking at more or less the end of this week, or sorry, next week, beginning of next week, where they will reveal the symbol and the name of the party, color of the party, which, you know, it's almost kind of cute where, you know, a party has to have a color, you know, we know it's, again, it kind of, but I do wonder if it plays into the pre-existing party politics again. You know, we have the red party, we have the yellow party, the PDP was the green party, of which, you know, technically the ILP was the green party before the PDP, etc., etc. Where it's almost like, if do we even really need political ideology and philosophies that guide, you know, why vote for me? No, I just need a color for you to identify with, and that's it.
But you know what we are missing here, I think, is this very powerful in-group, out-group effort. People being part of an in-group automatically creates an enemy outside.
Yeah.
So someone whom we don't want. And that's a very powerful force. Think about football, for example, in-group, out-group. You know, we have people getting really mad, people fighting other people and doing all kinds of strange things, football, cricket, all these kinds of things, because they identify with a group of people. Think about even nations as separate from countries now. You have groups of people who make up a nation within a broader country in some cases.
Yep.
Or you have groups of people that make up some pressure group, some interest group. And automatically those on the outside are to be fought against. So maybe that's what they're going for. Again, that's a psychological thing, huh? But we do see it showing up in all kinds of areas of human existence and human effort. So maybe that's part of it.
Given that it is a psychological thing, could it ever be resolved? Because I must admit, I'm rather frustrated and disappointed, to say the least. It seems as though it's a cycle. I must admit that I don't see anything much different or have much faith in the creation of a new party, because as per what you just said, if I go out on the street now and I say, you know, I'm for Tobago and I'm for the people of Tobago, which is what all these political parties have said or suggested, and if I put a symbol or a color, and I think the most powerful thing for any political party is their campaign slogan, and if it actually is in line with the beliefs or the opinions of one particular group, instantly I have power. So it's not necessarily politicians, but politicians are very smart in using the thought process and the weaknesses of the masses, in my opinion. How do we fix it if it's a psychological issue?
So we, you know, something I say about politicians, and no particular politician identified, but I don't always see them as logical actors. Very often the reason a politician exists is to stay in power.
Yes.
I mean, on the surface, they will tell us all kinds of other things, but sometimes when you look at their actions, as illogical as they are, it seems that their effort is really focused on staying in power. And that connects with this whole thing about a party. Because in order to stay in power, you need the masses to support you. In order to stay in power, you need people to sort of rally behind you, and the ground troops and the election, the machinery, and all those pieces of elements that come together to make this thing work. Now, that is sometimes in direct opposition to what they really should be about, which is, you know, making the place better for the citizenry, etc. And I do see people becoming very disenfranchised and very frustrated with that, as you just mentioned. We do get very frustrated, but you see, the thing is, we're in a loop. And when we have not been able to break out of that loop, think about all these new political parties that get formed that don't last very long or don't seem to be able to command any real presence in the electoral process. It's not that they don't have good people, I suspect they do, but somehow they're not able to break through this, I am red, you are yellow, you are blue, I am green, and therefore I am the in-group, you are the out-group, or we are the in-group. I can't tell you how we're going to break through that. I think the one thing I would say is people need to be able to see past what we are told and start to think for ourselves. But that requires a certain degree of, how do I say this, political maturity that I think Trinidad and Tobago is still growing up toward.
Well,
I try to say it in a really gentle way.
I understand what you're trying to say, but I will just say this. I always look to other more established democracies as saying, why can't we be like that? Only in the last couple of years to have to reverse my tune and saying, hey, they're looking not just more and more like us, they're looking worse than us in some cases. So some of what you said earlier on with regards to the in-group and the out-group, you see that a lot with regards to political and social ideologies and tribes on these wider issues where it's very, very divided. But I just want to ask, with regards to, okay, we need a party for re-election, but arguably this executive still had, what, 4 more years?
3+ years, yeah.
It seemed as though, based on the criticism, they needed an umbrella to work under in order to function, or risk derailing well, it might have been in the beginning stages, the very, very, very infancy stages, but based on some of the criticisms, it was almost as though to keep support just to function within the next 3 years, they needed a symbol. Do you think that's a fair thing to say?
No, I don't think they need a symbol to function in the next 3 or 4 years. But think about it. The functioning in the THA is enshrined in the fact that they've been elected. Fine. The truth is we could have how many ever people elected as individuals with no political symbol, as you just said, and they could function. So that's not the issue. The issue is, if I want to be re-elected, this is what I think the issue is. If I want to be re-elected, then I have to build up some support amongst the masses. People have to now get to know me for being part of, Richard's party. And as a result of that, they see me doing these things. I can promote myself and stand a chance down the road in the next 3 or 4 years when that time comes around. I think that's what it is about. Because really, if you look at the way the legislation is set up, there's no requirement for that. Us as individuals could just put up our names, get elected, form a group in terms of the THA or whatever, even our own parliament, and we can govern. We don't require a symbol or a party to govern under. Usually people have a symbol, but we don't require a party as such to govern under.
I think you've touched on it this morning brilliantly, and I think it's a deeper conversation, the psychology behind a political name, political symbol, and a political color.
Identity.
Yeah, it's seriously, it's a much deeper conversation, but I am very much appreciative that you've brought it to light. And so that there's an understanding that this is far more meaningful or far deeper than just simply saying, let me fix this. So there's a lot of work to be done, and a lot of work on the plates of those in Tobago, including the residents of Tobago. So let's see what happens. Next week, Monday, is just a week away, and a lot because I raise it once more. There's also supposed to be a reshuffle of the teaching executives.
Yeah, we've been waiting on that for months.
Yeah, so all that is to look forward to. But Mr. Solomon, thank you very much for your time and for your presence this morning, sir. Really appreciate the conversation.
Thanks much. Looking forward. Take care.
You too.
Hopefully you'll be on soon. Brilliant, Mr. Solomon. Folks, we break for news on the hour in WSN. We'll return. We'll open the phone lines so you, the viewer, could weigh in on everything that we had to say, as well as all of the topics that we did not bring up during the show. Stay tuned. News next.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. 2 shot dead in Piarco. Production reduced at desalination plant. Regionally, U.S. and Cuba to hold fresh round of migration talks this week. And internationally, 4 killed in Kentucky bank shooting. Now for the details. 2 persons have been shot and killed in Piarco after gunmen opened fire on a vehicle. Reports say 2 men were shot dead in the Arapun area around 8 last night. The gunmen alighted from a Mazda 6 vehicle and engaged in rapid gunfire at the Nissan Almera. The Almera crashed and the 2 occupants were discovered bleeding and unresponsive in the vehicle. The gunmen fled the scene. Several areas will be affected in the coming days due to reduced production at Point Lisa's desalination plant. WASA advises customers in parts of central and southwest Trinidad who may be experiencing low pressures or disruption in their normally scheduled water supply that this is due to a cutback in production at the Point Lisa's desalination plant. The Salcot normally supplies WASA with 40 million gallons of water per day. However, this has been reduced to 36 due to high algae concentrations at this time in the raw sea water at the intake area of the plant. These conditions are being closely monitored, and Salcot has advised that the facility will return to normal full production of 40 MGD as soon as conditions allow. In regional developments now, the United States and Cuba will hold another round of migration talks on Wednesday, officials said, as the Biden administration braces for the end of COVID-era border restrictions that have blocked Cubans in recent months from crossing into the U.S. from Mexico. The high-level meeting in Washington will follow one held in Havana in November and comes 1 year after the Biden administration resumed conversations after a long hiatus under former President Donald Trump. In international news now, 4 people were killed when an employee opened fire in a bank in Louisville, Kentucky, and live-streamed the attack on Instagram. The victims were aged between 40 and 64. Among 9 others injured was a rookie police officer who graduated into the force 2 weeks ago. The officer was struck in the head and is still critical after brain surgery. Police responded within 3 minutes and fatally shot the attacker in an exchange of gunfire. Well, that was your news to the hour on WESN. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for watching.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
Well, Welcome back to Talking Points here on WESN Content Capital. Ladies and gentlemen, it's about that time where we open up the phone lines, but not before the question of the day. This morning, Sean and I had a conversation following the sermon, the message given by Roman Catholic Archbishop Jason Gordon over whether or not, well, not whether or not, he said we should not live in fear. And following our conversation, our debate this morning, Sean and I are asking you, the viewer, can you live in Trinidad and Tobago without living in or with fear? I'll repeat the question one more time. It should appear on your screen in a moment. Can you live in Trinidad and Tobago without living in or with fear? You can call in and join us on Talking Point and share with us your thoughts, opinions, and answers. Feel free to answer the question, but if there's anything else that you'd like to comment on, you are more than welcome to do so. We only ask that you be mindful of the time of your contribution. Please turn on the volume on your television set before calling in on Talking Point. And don't wait until the 11th hour to call in. Call in now. We've got some time. We've got some space for you. You know? By the way, you can also tell us about your Easter weekend. And if you had any hot cross buns without sending some for me, we can have a conversation about that as well.
Keaton, we've been over this. You're on a diet.
It's not working.
I know, right? Yes, over the weekend, one of the things we did lament is the fact that, ironically, or rather, I guess we didn't necessarily intend for it to be ironic, the amount of crime that we've seen, as well as the fact that there have been the two different gun dealers have been in the news over different issues, one over the missing 500 rounds of ammunition, one with regards to, legal action being taken to block certain procedures with regards to the firearm user's license investigation, drama that continues to unfold that involves former Commissioner Gary Griffith. So it's, we mentioned this before with regards to the crime, but I just find it's interesting that the Archbishop decided to say, you know, that's his message for Easter. We should not live in fear. And even this weekend, similar to how, you know, big leaks after WASA says, you know, things are getting better. We have all the reason, you know, shown to us in the news over the weekend with regards to why we could be living in fear.
We have a caller on the line with us from Chigodas. Good morning, caller. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Morning.
Yeah, morning to you all, gentlemen. I have a great concern for WASA wanting to automate, to put in electronics in the system.
Mm-hmm.
Because take, for example, the SCADA system on the lines for flow. That is probably close to $400 million or more. The valves that they want to put in, that is probably close to $1 billion. The meat that they want to put on houses, that is another $1 billion. If you don't have water to supply, and you're spending all these billions on the mechanical system, what you put in all of these things for?
Mm-hmm.
That's number one. Number two, how are they going to charge for this water? Are they going to charge for the water they produce, the total amount of the plants? Are they going to charge for the amount of water they distribute to the people? Are they going to charge for the amount of water that is unaccounted for, included with the water they distribute, as a cubic meter rate or something like that, or unit meter, whatever unit rate is?
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is the bulk water they are producing. How are they going to charge for it? Is that going to include the desalination plant that has a serious cost to the public, which is the take or pay, where the water that is not taken, you pay for it anyway. So that is the other thing.
Good point.
Are we going to pay a rate that includes accommodating all the agencies that do not pay for water to WASA, so that WASA comes out break even based on what the citizenry is going to pay?
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, In the public consultations,
yes,
WASA is supposed to place before the public what is the position so that the public could address all these things. And they're not placed. The people who come to the public consultations is armchair executives. They are not hands-on people who know about WASA and how water is produced and distributed.
All right, caller, thank you very much. Have a good day.
Sorry, we have another caller right behind you that's been waiting from San Fernando. Do we still have you, caller? Morning, caller. Morning, you're on here.
Morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Hello.
To your question, you can give, you must live in fear because of the boldness of these people.
Call it. I'm not entirely sure.
10 gallons out of 40. It means you only have 1/10 short. But the number of people who are not getting water is more than the 1/10 who are getting.
All right, caller. Thank you very much. I believe that you answered
the question.
The first question for us. Yes, you cannot live without fear, especially given the current times that we're in, the boldness of some criminals. Many of them don't wear face masks anymore. They just simply don't care.
I think, I don't know, I could be speaking for myself, but the Pennywise robbery, to me, that was a new level. And I'm not sure if people realize around that time and after, the level of violence is not what we're accustomed to. It just is not. And I've said it before, with the amount of children being gunned down, and we're not really getting any public outcry over it. I don't understand. We have another caller from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
Hello, good morning.
Morning.
Hello.
Hello, you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Wait.
Yes, morning.
Hold on, lady and gentlemen. It seems as though we've got crossed lines there. Do we have the caller from San Fernando on the line with us? Good morning.
Gentlemen.
Yes, hi,
good morning. You know, I have to beat the drum again in support of those young assemblymen in Tobago that call the independence. If you look back at the history of the Tobago House of Assembly, apart from Ansel Dennis, who was just put there as a caretaker for Stacey Davis in Celestine, there has been no chief secretary since 1980 with Mr. Robinson that has been under 50 years old when they took the position. None of them. And this is the first young group, and we have to give them a chance. And I am going to stick my neck out to them. I hear what everybody's saying, you know. And the thing is, it is this big barrage against these young people, for as far as I'm concerned, that have not wanted to give them a fair chance. And I repeat that, a fair chance. And my thing is, we need to let the process go ahead and see where they go. They're trying something different. The old people tried already. Let me give them a chance. And to answer your question, Keaton, yes, I think you could live in Trinidad and Tobago without fear, man. You might live in some anxiety, but you could live without fear. Thank you.
Fair enough. Thank you very much, caller. I think we had a call on the line with us from Tunapuna. Hello, good morning.
Morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes. Concerning the water problem, we have waste more water than the consumer gets, you know. Because when all those mains wasting water and people ignoring to fix it, we don't have no efficiency when it comes for people to do their job. They just go to work to collect money. They don't give us in any way, in any field, any government department. You're ending up with a problem while they're collecting a salary. I think we have to behave more efficient. I'm 74 years now, and I used to work very hard and honest for my money. When others sitting down, I walk in. And to tell you the truth, I have achieved my goals. I don't know what becomes of some of those people who are inefficient, and you see when they collect their money, it goes down the drain. I'm telling you, right? Honesty is the best policy. And not the real problem here too, we are surrounded by water. We have water underground. Why can't we dig wells and bring up water from the artesian well water so that everybody could get water to use? And we have no problem. And in an efficient way, as soon as we have a burst line, they should have a crew to go out there and get it fixed immediately.
Yeah.
And that is all for today. I have many more to discuss, but another time. Let somebody else have a chance.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Miss.
One thing, just to reiterate, WASA did say, or the chairman did say that they're looking at more groundwater. So at least in that, you know, he is, I would assume, doing something that you would approve of. But I agree with your talk with regards to, he said it was a new WASA, but I think it's the same old WASA with regards to how many people in there are redundant and not really earning their keep.
They are looking at well water. In fact, I think recently I saw the chairman of WASA out with a magnifying glass looking at the ground. I don't know if he's discovered it as yet.
Well, I mean, you know, just before Belmont, they have a lot of water coming from the ground somewhere. There's a big pipe that's there. I assume that's what's leaking. Because the river level is way too low for the water to be coming from an overflowed river during 16% rainfall. So
don't need a magnifying glass to see mismanagement or neglect, do we? Do we have a call on there with us? I think we had one. All right, okay.
Just
go ahead.
No, just to repeat folks' question of the day. Can you live in TNT without living in or with fear? For those who cannot necessarily see the question very well, can you live in our homeland without fear?
Without trying to further spit in the wind, I welcome this call from Sugonas. Good morning.
Morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Well, bear in mind, fear is a gift from God that alerts us that danger or something unexpected, and we have to use fear to protect ourselves. The problem in Trinidad is we have things that causes fear due to bad governance. If you look at most of the crime, it is coming out from areas where government have not enforced the law. I have given you the whole story about East Dry River and when government acquired all the lands, paid everybody their compensation, and then leave them up there, and that causes more things. Then you had where Manning put people to squat on the straight line in Marabella, and when the opposition here, Ganga Singh went and put it from Kurupia to Shagona. If the government were to carry out their duty, the amount of things people in Trinidad have to fear will be considerably less. Right? And fear. If I still have more time, I would like to tell you WASA. The problem with WASA is, again, governance. If you know anything about WASA and its predecessor agencies, these things were always able to cover their operational costs. And we must ask ourselves why. Nobody. We had a report coming out from the parliament. I think I explained this to you already. And nowhere you have the public service research done on it. And the recommendations they make do not make sense. For example, one of their things that they found out was political interference. Did you see anything in those recommendations to handle that? Mm-hmm. And bear in mind that one of the, before government started to interfere, the criteria for WASA extending their service was on the feasibility of doing it. They will do something, then some new government come up with the idea of water for all, and they start to carry water in all kind of places that is uneconomic. Of course, like government, nobody collecting the rate, so you have government water back up. And nowhere in these recommendations say how you're going to collect those money.
All right, Professor. Thank you very much. Do have a good day. Good hearing from you. I think I think for the first point, we are very much in agreement. I think we actually see eye to eye on that. in particular, just to focus on WAS a bit more. The entire issue with WAS was that you can hold these press conferences and say all these things that are not necessarily unknown to us. But speak to me about the things that I am not entirely sure about. For example, what are we doing in the dry season in terms of infrastructure to ensure that we have water collection that goes to waste? You know, when runoff water, rainwater during the rainy season. Water storage, what are we doing about that in the dry season to ensure that there's water collection or water storage in the rainy season, so that for the following dry season, we probably have better plans in place?
Now, some of what the chairman said, it makes sense, it's good, okay, right, deal with the leaks so that we can manage our resources better. I get that. But again, you pointed out, reality is people have been facing hardship with regard to water over the last several months, right? One might even wonder to what extent before the dry season actually set in, because water availability is not necessarily tied to the wet season, dry season dichotomy that we live under. Sometimes when it rains too heavily, we might get water shortages because of the nature of how we access the water, and the heavy rains will cause extra contamination. It will limit supply for a while. Right now, algae is limiting the salcot's production, so that's affecting supply in salt. So,
I wonder if it's algae. I'm being genuine. I wonder to what extent it's algae, or if there's a possibility it's the sargassum seaweed as well, which, I mean, thus far, we haven't heard much about sargassum affecting that.
But I think that's right. Yeah, that would be. Sargassum comes from the east.
But there is a possibility, because there was a blanket that actually was heading further up the islands, but broke away to South America.
Potentially, the algae. I'm not a biologist, but the environment with all of this seaweed could be a suitable breeding ground for extra algae, and it has to go somewhere. Some of it could essentially, just bend the corner into the Gulf of Paria, whether from the south or the north. I'm not entirely sure. Please don't hold it against me. If you know, call in and let us know. But we do have a caller on the line from Cascade.
Final call for this morning. Good morning, caller. Hello, good morning.
Caller? Yeah.
Hello? All right, it seems as though the next public utility to hold a press conference and tell us what they're doing is the telecommunication services of Trinidad and Tobago, because I'm tired and frustrated of this. We had a couple of calls this morning as well with a terrible connections. It's probably not just our end, it's their end as well, and we know that most recently a fire disrupted some service. But come on, man.
The irony is, I know at home by me, our telephone service is not a traditional telephone line anymore. It's basically over internet or a data connection, right? Voice over IP. So one of our callers there, we were getting some delay, latency, similar to what you would get if you had a WhatsApp call or a Zoom conference. When you see an interview with Zoom and you see the person's voice speed up all of a sudden. The irony, of course, is now we have to ask to what extent is this infrastructure that much more expensive to operate, since it's the same infrastructure that you're using, you're providing internet for, but of course now you have more people using it for more things.
If at the end of the month I'm paying for a service, my account, by the way, and all my arrears are up to par, right?
Well, yes.
Clear. If I am paying for a service, now, in the instance of something like a bushfire and all that, you can't really help all
How
of
many
that,
phone
right?
lines is any part of a bushfire?
I don't. It might be structures as well. Okay.
Very few.
But just bear in mind,
But
in the extraordinary circumstances,
in urban and suburban centers, very few phone lines are subject, or fiber optic lines are subject to bushfire.
Sure, a tree fell down and knocked out electricity for the whole of Trinidad.
That is true.
So I am just seeing the extraordinary circumstances of which a bushfire may disrupt service. I mean, all right, okay. But if I am paying for a service every month, and I do, and my internet or my telephone or my television for that fact is not the quality or even not the connectivity or the reliability or whatever word you want to use to describe it, do I have to pay you in full? Do I really have to pay you in full?
Now, granted, if you want to take days off of your bill, it's not necessarily worth that much, or especially, sorry, not days, hours off of your bill. It's not worth that much, right? So don't start suing TSTT or some other provider for a few hours.
Consumer affairs in TNT is
isn't there a body that's supposed to be dealing with these issues?
Consumer affairs.
Right. One would think it's in the name, they would, you know, do the job. But we just had to call her, lament the fact that they have people who collect checks and do nothing, don't provide any productivity to the workplace. Therein lies one problem. Back to WASA, I said it before and I said it again. Yes, we've had all of these things to long term and all these nice things, but the reality that people face, you know, what's being done to that? And I think the communication did not necessarily fully bridge the gap of, this is what we already have planning in the works. Here's our explanation as to why some people have been without water for months that we know directly, we know of.
Actually, I spoke to a gentleman who hasn't had water for years, living in Digger Marston. I think actually, what is the name of that park right after you pass Westmore? It slips my mind right now. Right, he lives within that gated community.
And he hasn't had water for years?
Right? He hasn't had water for years. He has a water truck delivering to him 2 to 3 times a week because he hasn't had water in years.
From WASA, or he had to pay?
No, he's getting the free water from WASA.
Okay, well at least something is
working.
Yeah,
but then WASA has to pay this truck for this one house. This is one house. What about all the other houses?
That's what I find interesting. To some extent, it's even worse when you're going to say, no. You're surrounded by everybody getting water and you have no water. How does that even work? I don't understand.
Well, it's a community. It's a community, but anyway, listen, that's where we'll have to close off and wrap things up for this morning's edition of Talking Points. Thank you very much to Mr. Solomon once more for joining Sean and I on the psychology of political identity. Very important conversation. And to all our callers, thank you for your contribution this morning. Sean Michael Small, your closing remarks.
I just wanted to say, with regards to Mr. Sambanano's call, I get what you're saying, and at least with regards to this, I agree with you. And I think it goes back to what Mr. Solomon and we were discussing about the ideologies. And I think it's very lamentable that even in this opportune moment where we're not bound by political identity, right? You're talking 13 of the 15 seats, you know, are united, but they don't necessarily have a political party. And we're not even willing to, you know, we're so bound by the old school thinking, well, I elected a slate. Don't mind that technically speaking, and I believe I said this already, if you elected someone for the THA elections based on political party, from what I understand, you're doing it wrong because the THA does not recognize political parties.
Anyway, I will give you something to think about. You can answer me tomorrow, you can answer me later on this week or next week. Is there a possibility in the future, just as how recently we saw Jack Warner and Tanti Cams hugging up again, is there a possibility in the future that you will see Farley, Chavez, Augustine, and Watson, Solomon, Duke hugging again?
I can answer that right now. I think at the end of the day, one could regret to some extent the partnership with Duke. And maybe if this was the first time, but you had enough more insight, you could have put more things in place to prevent such a blow up of an outcome. But I don't think they're going to necessarily risk round 2, right?
Well,
and I think it would be rather sad that they aren't, I mean, the majority of what you elected in the PDP is with them. That's my opinion. If they need Duke to get reelected, and I would say Duke would probably need them, that's why he would go back to them, I think that would be rather sad.
Well, I would just...
That would be a mistake on the
share...
voters, it would be a mistake on Farley Augustine's part, it would be a mistake all around.
I don't have time to share with you my point. I will lay strong, but for now I wish you a great day as you head back out to work or whatever it is you're doing following the long weekend. Please be safe in whatever you do. Don't live in fear, but live with it, as the caller from Shigon has pointed out. It is a gift from God, depending on how you look at it. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Keaton Shaw. This has been Talking Point. Remember, today is a good day to have a good day and a great week ahead. If things go good, we'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.